What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Bel-Air and why I think the show falls short of what its creators intended and why it's kind of their own fault. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. So first off, let me admit that I'm not a fan of remakes, reboots, or whatever you want to call them. Mostly because I think they're basically functioning as desperate attempts by networks and film studios to recycle old ideas, hoping to get new, usually younger, audiences to support it, while trying to duplicate the old movie or TV show's success, so they don't have to get creative and come up with new ways to entertain us. And the part that makes it even more of a waste of time is that they're usually never as good as the original movie or TV show. And there are good reasons for why that is. And I don't know, with all the streaming services out there these days, the way I see it is, any show that was good enough to get a reboot is bound to be available to watch somewhere. So why would you bother watching the reboot when you can just watch the usually superior original TV show or movie? Now, as a diehard fan of the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I had my reservations when I heard Peacock was remaking the show. But I gave it 2 full seasons for the creators to change my mind. They didn't. And they failed to do so for a number of reasons. First of them being the change in format. Now, one of the biggest reasons the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air worked is because it was a 30-minute situation comedy that ran in the early to mid-90s. Now, you might think something like that shouldn't mean anything, but changing a show from 30 minutes to an hour is a huge deal. Now, first of all, 30-minute shows are typically classified as comedies, whether they're The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air made 30 years ago with a laugh track essentially pointing a big foam finger at all the punchlines, or whether they're Insecure, made only 6 years ago with no baked-in laughter at all. Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, making a show an hour long basically turns it into a drama, which is something totally different than what the original show was, and it tends to make you pay a whole lot more attention to the actual acting. And speaking of the acting, that brings me to my next point of contention with this particular show. The acting isn't very good, especially where Jabari Banks is concerned. But I want to make a point to specifically state that I don't think it's his fault. Now, when I went and checked his IMDb page, he essentially has no acting credits except Bel-Air, which leads me to believe that he was clearly cast as the lead in a network television show for one reason and one reason only. He looks like Will Smith. And while I can understand why you would want an actor who looks like Will Smith to play a character made famous by Will Smith, he's not Will Smith. This whole situation makes me think of a video I saw once where T-Pain was talking about the music industry and how he would always run into rappers who would tell him that they were going to be the next Drake or the Baby or whoever. And he made the point that you're not going to find a better the Baby than the Baby. And that trying to duplicate the style of another artist that has already made it in the industry is essentially an exercise in futility. I think the same rules apply in the film industry. Again, the biggest reason the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air worked so well is Will. And while, like Jabari, Smith's stint as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was his first acting job, he was essentially playing an over-exaggerated, fictionalized version of himself. So he was able to lean into that in a way that Jabari doesn't necessarily have the option to do. Mostly because he is also playing a fictionalized version of Will Smith. And while we're on the topic of Will Smith, Oscar slap notwithstanding, I'm sure that fans of the original show would make the case that the Fresh Prince is an iconic character. If not at large, then certainly in black culture. But that show also produced another iconic character in black culture. Alfonso Ribeiro's version of Carlton Banks. I mean, people are still doing the Carlton 30 years after the fact. Now, the person who plays Carlton Banks in Bel-Air, Ollie Charlatan, I hope I said his name right, he also fails to live up to the original character. And again, not his fault. It's kind of like Kobe trying to be the next Jordan. You're essentially chasing something that you can never actually catch. But look, I want to be clear. I'm not necessarily trying to nuke this show because there were some things that I thought worked okay. But anybody who knows anything about television and film knows that to get a show right is almost impossible. To make a hit, something truly great, pretty much every choice that gets made by the people in charge has to work out. It's kind of like a science experiment, like trying to catch lightning in a bottle, truly. And if you make just one major mistake, just one, you no longer have lightning in a bottle, you just have a bottle. The creators of this show could have taken the idea of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, stripped it down to its bare bones, and then built it back up as something truly separate. There are TV shows and films that have done that historically. I mean, I hate to burst all you guys' bubble, but almost every TV show or movie you've ever seen was inspired by one or more that came before it. But Andy and Susan Borowitz didn't do that. What they did instead was lean into the show of the past in ways that not only felt deliberate, but were over-exaggerated. They could have set the show someplace else, like New York, but they didn't. They could have changed the characters' names and backstories, but they didn't do that either. They may have changed some minor things in order to update the characters, but they are, at their core, the same characters from the original show. They even went so far as to cast actors who looked like the original actors in some cases. As I stated before, Jabari Banks looks just like Will Smith. Jordan L. Jones looks a lot like DJ Jazzy Jeff. Stevante Hart looks a lot like Don Cheadle's version of Trey from the original show. And April Parker Jones even favors Vernee Watson's version of Viola Banks. They even copy story beats directly from the original show, thus ultimately rejecting the opportunity to allow the show to be its own thing. They clearly wanted to stand on the shoulders of the original show. But the problem is that you can't do that without also being compared to the original show. It's kind of like an up-and-coming singer deciding to remake an entire Whitney Houston album. You're kind of setting yourself up for failure because you're not Whitney Houston. And while I won't go so far as to call Bel-Air a failure, it's certainly not as good as the original show. Not even close. Which ultimately makes you wonder, what was the point? But what do you guys think? Am I being overcritical? Or do you get where I'm coming from? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you who might be new to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. That way you'll be notified when I drop a new video. Also, be sure to go check out themadscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and information on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.